It is 6 o'clock in New York City. Welcome to Studio F. It's Fox and Friends, and we start this program with a Fox News alert. Congressman Steve Scalise worsening to critical condition overnight after being shot in the hip just 23 hours ago. The dramatic moments caught on cell phone.
President Trump visiting his bedside as he fights for his life.
Leland Vittert is live from the White House with the very latest. Leland?
And still very much a fight for the majority whip, who is still in the hospital this morning in critical condition. Overnight, we learned that he had received multiple blood transfusions and will still need additional surgery to recover from that single gunshot wound that went into his hip and then through his pelvis. The president returned about 10 p.m. last night here to the White House from visiting Scalise and his family at the hospital. There you can see the president walking out, shaking hands with doctors. The president tweeting, "Just left hospital. Rep. Steve Scalise, one of the truly great people, is in very tough shape, but he is a real fighter. Pray for Steve." Earlier, the president said this.
Congressman Scalise is a friend, and a very good friend. He's a patriot, and he's a fighter. He will recover from this assault. America is praying for you, and America is praying for all of the victims of this terrible shooting.
And of the others injured, there, in addition to Scalise, 4 others of the 2 Capitol police officers. One has been treated and released. The other, Special Agent Crystal Griner, also got a visit from the president last night. At least right now, the White House seems to be moving on for what would be a typical Thursday here, and we are told the president's trip down to Florida tomorrow to talk about the rollback of some of the Obama-era Cuba engagement programs is still on. Back to you guys.
All right. Leland Vittert, North Lawn of the White House. Thank you, Leland.
It's unbelievable. You know, this guy, there's so many red flags here. The guy left his house, left his family in Illinois, left his wife and his dogs, and moved down to D.C. to live in his van for several months, was showering at the YMCA.
I know.
It's just, there's so many red flags here that I'm surprised someone didn't say anything. You know, he has a history of domestic violence. He was never convicted. He was arrested several times, but never convicted. But
right. And now, you know, I feel bad, too, for Bernie Sanders. This guy's sitting there saying, you know, I fight for Bernie Sanders, and this is the guy I want elected, has horrible things to say against President Trump. And then Sanders goes out and goes, listen, it's not my guy. I don't really preach hatred. That's not what I'm about, which is 100% true. I think people have to go out of their way to make sure if it's Bernie Sanders today, if someone's going to use somebody else's name tomorrow, they realize we should keep politics out of this. This guy's a whack job. You cannot control who follows you. You cannot control who shoots people in your name. And I think people should just make sure that they don't vilify Sanders because this clown happens to be this murderer. I'm beginning to get intimations, some people saying, well, look, what do you want? What's going on that side? And I think that's a problem.
Well, police have not disclosed the motive yet, obviously, because they've said it's so early in the investigation. But the evidence does suggest that it was political violence. And there's a stage when hate, and we see a lot of hate in this country these days, turns violent. Congressman Rodney Davis says the political rhetoric, terrorism, has got to stop.
This political rhetoric and political discourse that has led to hate has led to gunfire. I never thought I'd go to baseball practice for charity and have to dodge bullets. This has got to stop, and it's got to stop today. We have the right to be free in this country. We have the right to elect our leaders, and we have the right to go vote against them if we disagree with their policies. But we've got to ratchet down the rhetoric that we've seen, not only on social media, but in the media, in the 24-hour news cycle. These are the things that have to stop. This is a result, I believe, of political, rhetorical terrorism. That has to stop.
And if you see the town halls, you see the anger, you see these constituents getting in the lawmakers' face, you see what's happening with many of the high-profile people in our country calling for crazy things. You see other leaders who can't stop cursing. All of a sudden, they can't control themselves. They're so angry. And a lot of this directed at who's been elected in Capitol Hill.
Some are saying it's the elements of the left. You've got Kathy Griffin holding up the fake beheaded. Exactly. You've got Shakespeare in the Park. You have Madonna Madonna saying she wants to do this and that to the White House. I mean, look at the headline on the Post this morning. It says he was hunting us. Target GOP. This one, Daily News, says hunting Republicans.
Right. And the Daily News uses this too on their op-ed pages to talk about the need for more gun control. But to Brian's point, the guy was crazy, essentially. His neighbors described him as obnoxious about politics. He's just been a radical nut. One neighbor said he was barred from all county board meetings because he has caused trouble in various places. Keep in mind, a lot of the rancor that we hear in politics these days goes back to the election of Donald Trump. And there are certain elements of the media and of society that have what we have referred to on this program as Trump derangement syndrome. And Ainsley, you're right. Whether it is those depictions of the severed head or Madonna blowing up the White House or stuff like that, too many people, substantial people, have been quiet about it. And it doesn't just extend to Donald Trump. It extends to his supporters
To the
as
media.
well.
Many of the media, they're being quiet about it. You have these celebrities that are doing things like this, and they're not. Someone needs to stand up on the left side and just say too much.
You know, I used to do sports all the time, and then people get so angry, and it would always end with, "Hey, it's just a game." And when it comes to politics, people go in there, you argue your issue, and then at the end of the day, you go have a drink with them, you go out to lunch with them or her, and it's, you know, it's issues. We have an election, and then when the election's over, you turn the page. We've stopped turning the page. You can go back to Bill Clinton, and people thought the Republicans went over the top with the impeachment. Okay, fine. Then with George Bush, he didn't really win. His brother was governor of Florida. That's the only reason why he won. Okay. Then President Obama wins. I want to transform American society. That gets me angry, you know, or it gets that X person angry or Y person angry. Then Donald Trump, he didn't win the popular vote, or the Russians were responsible. So that gets people additionally angry. So it's not about tax cuts and tax reform or immigration and building the wall. It's about...
And on all of this, last night.
The left wants to denormalize and dehumanize, to use your words, its political opposition. And they do that in a variety of ways. So, for example, when Charles Murray wants to give a speech at Middlebury College, they have to have a riot. They don't have a debate in which they demolish his argument. They don't want to win the debate. They want to prevent the debate taking place.
That's right.
They want to label somebody a hater. Once you do that, you're basically saying there's no form of civilized political discourse possible with your opponent, and the logic of that is that instead you riot and you beat them up as they do at Middlebury, or you open fire on them, and you make politics impossible if you do that.
Well, the first shots have been fired. Let's pray it's the last and America comes to its senses before it is too late. Those are the words of Michael Goodwin, who's written an op-ed to that effect today.
A Democrat. Yeah.
Let's hope it's a turning point. And in 3 weeks from now, it's not back to the same old stuff. Meanwhile, Governor Terry McAuliffe, who, by the way, is making it clear he wants to run for president, as governor of Virginia, you do want to hear from him. But I was shocked to hear this.
I have long advocated, this is not what today is about, but there are too many guns on the street. We lose 93 million Americans a day to gun violence. I mean, I've long talked about this. Background check, shutting down gun show loopholes. You know, that's not for today's discussion, but it's not just about politicians. We worry about this every day for all of our citizens. We lose 93 million Americans a day to gun violence.
There's only one shooter?
93 individuals a day.
The question is, how would gun control change this situation, though? Because the guy he was never convicted of a crime. So
he had a gun license in Chicago.
Right. But he's never been convicted of a crime. So he goes in to buy a gun. They're going to say, okay, this guy, there are no red flags. There's nothing in his history.
Right. And Terry McAuliffe, there he goes. I'm not going to talk about this today, but then he talks about gun control. Congressman Roger Williams says he was heartened by the fact that when he heard the shooting coming from over there, a short time later, he heard shooting coming from behind him. Those were the cops who would ultimately save many of their lives. Listen to this.
There could have easily been 25 deaths or more today. But Officers Griner and Bailey prevented that, and my family and I will be forever grateful. The thin blue line held today. And law enforcement officers everywhere should be proud. And Americans everywhere should be thankful that this is still the kind of country that still produces these kinds of heroes. So I ask everybody to join me in praying for the victims and for their full recoveries. Remember two things. Well, first of all, I'm for the Second Amendment, being Second Amendment guy, and I'm from Texas. So yes, I would have felt a lot more comfortable if we were able to do that.
And you have to remember, Steve Scalise is the third most powerful Republican, so he had security detail out there at the baseball field. If he hadn't been there, no one would have had a gun. They would have had gloves and baseball bats.
And Special Agent Bailey, who was there, was injured yesterday, was treated and released. However, Special Agent Greiner is still at the MedStar Hospital Center with an injury, a gunshot wound to her ankle.
And those who knew her in college and watched her play, they said that she is a leader. She was fearless, a fabulous personality, and really looked at in a high esteem on Capitol Hill. And finally, when it comes to Steve Scalise, from the time we were on the couch till now, things have gotten much more challenging, as it seems that bullet ripped through his pelvis, and he's going to have additional surgeries. And even though the president got into his room last night, he was not conscious.
Yesterday, the surgeries were mainly to stop the bleeding. There's injury to the bone that's going to come later.
Well, yeah, he'll be feeling those effects probably for the rest of his life. It's not an easy thing to recover from, but he lost so much blood and was on the baseball field for at least 9 minutes before they could get to him.
He will not be at the game tonight, but the game will go on. All right. In the meantime, we've got some breaking news out of South Carolina. Jillian joins us right now. What's happening?
That's right, guys. Let's begin with this. A Fox News alert right now. The FBI is interrogating a man who claimed there was a dirty bomb on a container ship in South Carolina. A YouTube conspiracy theorist saying it was placed on board during a recent trip to the Middle East. Authorities clearing the port of Charleston overnight after finding no credible threats. Also this developing overnight. North Korea says they released American student Otto Warmbier on humanitarian grounds. The 22-year-old in a hospital in Cincinnati after spending 17 months as a prisoner of the rogue nation. Now take a look at your screen right now. There's a brand new picture showing him moments after touching down in the U.S. You can see two men, they're holding him up, carrying him to an ambulance. He's semi-conscious. His parents say he was brutalized by his captors and slipped into a coma for a year. We are expected to learn more about his condition at a press conference at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The death toll in that London apartment inferno climbing to 17, and it's expected to get higher. Several people are missing more than 24 hours after the high-rise burst into flames, leaving many people trapped inside. One woman desperate to save her baby, dropping the child out a 10th floor window into the arms of people below. That baby did survive. The cause of the fire is still under investigation, but some are blaming a faulty refrigerator. And that's a look at your headlines, guys, this morning. We'll keep you updated on all of those stories.
Scary. Living in New York City, we've all been talking about
Absolutely. You see those flames just engulf that building. You can't imagine.
Yeah, one person, and hundreds of people live in these buildings. One person makes a mistake, and then everyone's belongings and lives are affected.
They redid the building, and they didn't put in sprinklers. All right, Jillian, thank you. Coming up, congressmen on the field say Capitol Police prevented a massacre yesterday.
It was a tremendous feeling of joy.
Yes.
To see a good guy shooting back. And if they had not been there, it could have been a massacre.
Alabama Congressman Gary Palmer was there. He's going to tell us about the incredible heroism he saw firsthand.
And a 4th of July celebration canceled because one person doesn't like President Trump. Really? I'm not kidding.
It was a tremendous feeling of joy.
Yes.
To see a good guy shooting back. And if they had not been there, it could have been a massacre.
Wow, and we did see some of that cell phone video, and you saw the horror. Capitol Police hailed as heroes for ending a rampage that could have been much worse. Congressman Gary Palmer was playing shortstop next to Steve Scalise, just yards from the gunman when the shooting began. He joins us now. Congressman, first off, on the condition of the majority whip, we find out that he has been downgraded now, and it looks that bullet did more damage than originally thought. What do you know?
Well, I don't know any more than you do, Brian. We're just keep praying for Steve. He's a great guy. We need him back.
Absolutely. And when you talk about where you were, in retrospect, now that it's been almost 24 hours, what are your thoughts about what took place yesterday?
Well, it's obviously a little surreal, but I was about 20 yards from the gunman. Trent Kelly, Congressman Trent Kelly from Mississippi, was at third base. And when I heard the gunshot, I immediately knew what it was. I yelled at Trent that it was a gunshot, and he turned and he said he has a gun. And we headed toward cover, and I heard at least 2 more shots. and I saw Steve go down. I knew he was hit low. I didn't know where. I thought maybe in the leg. And then Steve dragged himself from the infield dirt out into the outfield grass. When we got to cover, we were yelling at Steve to stay down and stay still.
And I understand he was able to crawl out there, and after 9 to 10 minutes, you're able to get to him and get him some liquids. I know you're going to play the game tomorrow, tonight rather. And if people want to donate, go to congressionalbaseball.org. You've also added a charity for fallen police officers, which I think is important. Congressman, a lot of people are saying this is a turning point. There's going to be more Democrats and Republicans getting along, setting the tone from Washington. Do you have a reason to feel optimistic today?
Well, I hope we do. I think we saw some of that yesterday when we all came together. I've got a number of Democrat friends who came over to see me. I was very encouraged by that. But, Steve, the country is fraying at the edges, and we've got to pull the country back together. We've got to be able to reestablish a civil discourse. Otherwise, the future of the nation, I think, is in grave danger.
True, and we'll see, I guess, the game tomorrow will be bring together. We saw the comments from Nancy Pelosi and Paul Ryan on Capitol Hill. We'll see if you look for leadership to lead the way.
I think you'll see it from leadership on both sides of the aisle. But we've got to see it, I think, in the entire community of America. It's got to come from the media. It's got to come from the pundits who work social media.
Gotcha.
It's not just the rhetoric from the politicians. It's across the board.
Congressman Palmer, I'm glad you're okay, and we're all pulling for Steve Scalise. Thank you. Meanwhile, coming up straight ahead, we changed gears. The shooting comes after a series of disgusting depictions of the president. When will the left stop the rhetoric? Will the right join in as well?
We have some quick headlines for you. It is hard to forget this video. A doctor dragged off a United Airlines plane as terrified passengers look on. It could be incidents like that are making customers complain more. The DOT says they received nearly 2,000 complaints just in the month of April. That is a 70% increase since last year. And a flight packed with people stopped moments before it took off when fuel starts gushing out of a wing and onto the tarmac. This happened in New Jersey. Moments later, the pilot canceled that flight. It was going to Italy, and the plane was taken out of service. It is unclear what caused that leak.
27 seconds.
To join me, to resolve, to come together, to lift each other up, and to show the country, to show the world that we are one house.
We will use this occasion as one that brings us together and not separates us further.
We are strongest when we are unified and when we work together for the common good.
Words we needed to hear yesterday. Calls for unity from both sides of the aisle after the baseball game shooting yesterday, about 24 hours ago. But will the left answer those calls? And will the right? With everything we've seen from riots on college campuses to so-called art depicting the assassination of our president, many are asking, where's the civility? Let's talk about it with Republican strategist and Fox News contributor Lisa Booth and Democratic strategist and former Bernie Sanders advisor Chuck Rocha. Chuck's the guy in the hat. More than both of you.
In case anyone was wondering.
That's right. All right. What happened yesterday, you would both agree, and I've already read your pre-interviews. You both agree it is terrible. It's got to stop. We don't know the motive, Lisa, but the evidence would suggest that it's political. I mean, this guy had all sorts of stuff on his Facebook page. Trump is a traitor. Trump has destroyed our democracy. It's time to destroy Trump and company.
Well, and clearly this guy had something bigger going on than just politics, but I really do think it underscores some serious things that are happening in this country and sort of this societal breakdown and a breakdown even over politics. I mean, there's just a lack of respectful discourse, and I can attest to the fact that you can get along with someone that you disagree with. Chuck and I have had lunch before. I consider him a friend. I respect him, even though I respectfully disagree with some of the things that he says. But look, I think there's this dehumanization and also demonization of others that people disagree with politically. And I have a broader concern that there is this normalization of violence happening in the country. I mean, we've seen everything from cars lit on fire on Inauguration Day, businesses being broken into, as you mentioned, this violence on college campuses. A Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, not allowed into a building to do her government duties. So I think, we had a congressman almost run off the road because of health care.
Right.
And it's just really getting out of control.
All right. Chuck, there were elements of this when Barack Obama was president of the United States, but it seems like Trump derangement syndrome has just kicked into high gear. And whether it's Kathy Griffin or Shakespeare in the Park or Madonna wanting to blow up the White House, it's gotten to the place where we just haven't heard a lot of voices from mainstream Democrats say, hey, this is not the road we should be going down.
Look, I disagree with Donald Trump on all of his policies, or most of his policies, like I do with lots of Republicans, like I do with Lisa Booth. But you know what? I respect Lisa, and we can have a conversation without throwing fists at each other because I knew I would lose. So you can have these discourses, and you can figure out how to have this conversation. I work in the belly of the beast. I run political campaigns, as you know, for a living. And it has really gotten out of hand, not as much with the candidates because they know there's recourse, but there's so much on the far right and the far left on the internet and a 24-hour news cycle that keeps people ginned up and mad all the time.
And Chuck, you raise a great element. Explain how you feel redistricting has actually contributed to this.
Because all of the congressional districts now are pretty much either safe Republican or safe Democrat, except for just a little bitty bit. So those congressmen feel like they have to feed the far right of their party or the far left of their party, or they'll get a primary opposition from within their own party, and that helps stoke the fire of throwing red meat to the base all the time, which again keeps them riled up, and you end up with consequences like we saw yesterday that are totally unacceptable.
Totally unacceptable. Lisa, final word.
No, I agree with Chuck, and I think that also seeps into statewide elections as well, because they're still having to worry about their primary. But look, I also think it comes down to personal responsibility, and if we call on members of Congress to act more civil and more respectful of each other, then we ourselves have to be willing to do that as well. And it's, stop with some of the hateful rhetoric. I think having discourse, and there's never going to be unity over ideas. That's the whole point of Congress. That's the whole point of, having your political beliefs. But we have to be able to have discussions, obviously, without it turning to violence.
Yeah. And Lisa, one final point, and that is there should be unity in this country. The fact that you might not, Chuck, not a big fan of Donald Trump, but he knows that's how it works. Donald Trump is the president, and people just need to get used to the idea he's the president. Let's move on from there.
Absolutely. And I also think the media is culpable in sort of this delegitimizing of the president, speaking of him in terms that allow for people to feel comfortable with degrading him and, using rhetoric that is unacceptable.
All right. Chuck and Lisa, thank you very much.
Have a good morning.
Thank you, Steve.
Civil debate. What do you think about that, folks? Email us friends@foxnews.com. You could Facebook us, or you could tweet us as well. Meanwhile, the left already calling for gun control within hours after the shooting. But is that really the answer? Dana Loesch, a proud member of the NRA, is coming up next from St. Louis. And New York City trying to protect the...
All right, Dana Loesch is with us right now. She's an outstanding talk show host on The Blaze, but she's also a national NRA spokesperson and always has insight in times like this. Dana, welcome back.
So good to see you guys. Good morning to you.
Good to see you, too. Talking about this baseball shooter, will this be a wake-up call, do you think, Dana, for the left or for the right or for everyone involved in politics?
I sure hope so. And, I don't want to police speech. I am a free speech purist. However, I think that there's one thing that we all have to recognize here and do something about. And that's looking at some of the language of the left. You can't have people who are holding up a beheaded prop of the president and saying F the Republicans from the stage of the California Democrat Convention, and having the DNC chair do the same thing, having that presidential assassination Shakespeare play in the park, and have this sort of environment and not expect that that is going to affect people in a negative way, maybe even inspire these people who are feeding off of this poison to perhaps do something. Now, I don't want the government at all to police speech. I would hope that people have enough respect for the process in this country, enough respect for the election and the voters' will that they made quite clear in November, that they respect this process and that they perhaps use language a little bit more reflective of that. Because I know you guys saw the New York Times piece that is still trying to blame Sarah Palin for what happened to Gabby
Right.
Giffords. They ran this article just yesterday. The left is still trying to place this on people like Sarah Palin and Tea Party organizers. But yet, let's look at some of the left's rhetoric. I mean, if you cannot dissent civilly, then maybe perhaps someone should take a second look at their opinion and see whether or not it's worth hearing.
Sure. Regarding Jared Loughner, who shot Gabby Gifford, he was clearly unstable. I mean, we know that now. But then you look at this guy, this James T. Hodgkinson from out in southern Illinois, and he was clearly politically motivated, or active, let's say, but we don't know whether or not the motive was politics.
But he's unstable, too, living in his van, creeping out everybody he's with, hanging out in a sports bar all day, showering at the YMCA.
Exactly. And he had scoped out that baseball field for a couple of weeks before he had acted, according to numerous reports. Yeah, anybody who's going to sit there and unload on congressional members that way, yeah, they're crazy. It's a combination of crazy, and it's a combination of a lot of Democrat leaders that are trying to mainstream this language, this rhetoric, and this aesthetic, for the lack of a better way to put it, as though that's okay to just to react and have a tantrum, a public tantrum like this because you lost in November. Look, we don't always get what we want. The people made their decision in November. I feel like we're still relitigating the election. Do you guys feel like that?
Absolutely.
And it seems as though this is kind of a symptom of it. Some people need to get a reality. They need to get a grip here. Have a reality check.
So Dana, let me ask you
this is
something.
part and parcel of being in America.
Nothing you said is inaccurate. I think even Democrats would say that most of them aren't accepting it behind closed doors. I'm sure Schumer's talking to Nancy Pelosi and going, we got to destabilize this and make sure, the Republicans pay the price. I get that. But then other people are listening and saying, wait a second, the president became president because he was the anti-Mitt Romney. He felt Mitt Romney was too meek. He went out there and got aggressive. He said exactly what Republicans should do. He eviscerated 16 other fine candidates, gets the nomination, and now his confrontational style, they say, has spurred other confrontational styles. Do you think the president bears any responsibility for the rhetoric today?
I think that's weak because the president's not going out there saying F the Democrats. The president is not going out there telling people, oh, get in their faces. And first off, I actually think the president toned his rhetoric back since he took the White House, which is a good thing. I think he's pivoted to becoming a little bit more presidential in his demeanor and his delivery. I thought his statement after this tragedy yesterday was pitch perfect. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that from a lot of the left. I know we saw Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, who immediately went out there before we even knew the name of this guy, before we even knew the motive or anything about Hodgkinson, and he was immediately trying to politicize it, make it all about gun control, which was absolutely beyond the pale. And then he used insane numbers to do so because he, like so many other people out there, have more zeal than knowledge.
Yeah, he said 93 million people were killed every day, and one of the reporters said that's a
lot.
high number.
We'd have nobody left.
He said, hold on, 93 people.
Then America would be gone in a few days.
All right. So,
exactly. It was crazy.
Surely. So the shooting at Simpson Field happened about 24 hours ago. Tonight, they're going to have the big game. Tomorrow, what do we do as Americans?
I would love to see, I know that Barry Loudermilk, Representative Loudermilk, had brought this up. He said, you know what, we actually need to see some national reciprocity or a little reciprocity here for lawmakers, which I think they should. I hope that's one of the things that lawmakers take up in Washington, D.C. But the bigger picture here is that I hope people realize that you can still disagree civilly in the United States. Just because somebody thinks differently than you do, they have a different political opinion, they have a different political candidate, it doesn't mean that they're your enemy. It just means that they have a different means to go about maybe perhaps a similar end, and you have to persuade hearts and minds. You're not going to persuade through fear. You have to persuade through actually talking to people, getting to know them, making friends with them, not stalking a bunch of congressional members outside of a baseball field and unloading on them because you couldn't take a difference of political opinion on Facebook.
Great point.
The New York Times actually the New York Times actually praised President Trump's tone yesterday, and Nancy Pelosi had some great things to say from the floor, as did Paul Ryan. So maybe things will be a little bit different.
Let's hope.
I hope so. I hope they are, because we need to turn a new page in this country on that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, we're going to hand it over to Jillian, who is upstairs and has some headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
Good morning, guys.
Oh, you're down here.
I am down here. Hello, welcome. We know the identity of the man who shot 3 people at a UPS facility before turning the gun on himself. 38-year-old Jimmy Lamb, a driver, opened fire on his colleagues in San Francisco. sending hundreds running for their lives. Right now, Lam's motive is not yet known. He reportedly filed a complaint about working overtime back in March. The biggest city in the nation could soon be forced to reveal its anti-terror tactics. The New York City Council introducing a bill that would require the NYPD to issue reports on what kind of surveillance equipment they use and how they store and protect private information. The NYPD calls the bill, quote, insane, saying it gives attackers a roadmap of intelligence operations, helping them evade cops. How about this one? A 4th of July celebration, a tradition? It's canceled because the founder doesn't like the president. Katrina Breeze started the New Orleans Flotilla Parade in 2012. You can see the pictures here, but after President Trump took office, she says she's not feeling patriotic anymore. During an interview, Breeze said, quote, when I think about wearing my flag dress and waving flags, I don't know what it means this year. It's obviously a topic that's getting a lot of conversation, a lot of buzz around town, guys, I'm sure, at this hour.
You know, thank you, Jillian. And that's exactly what we're talking about. She doesn't like the president, so I'm going to cancel it. It's like how many people have unfriended you on Facebook because they don't like your opinion? How many arguments around the kitchen table when the relatives come in? And how many people actually have broken up over politics? I think we've gone too far.
I agree with you, Steve.
Right. Oh, man.
Well, let's just hope we're speaking to our next guest, because I see him lining up in the on-deck circle. And coming up straight ahead, believe it or not, President Trump vowed to wipe out that gang, MS-13. So is he getting the job done? We'll have a report next.
And as we learn more about the shooter's criminal past, we want to know, could this have been prevented? Judge Andrew Napolitano says no doubt.
Morning, Judge.